I hope I'm not going to start sounding too predictable. But here's my question right now. Have you ever been in love to the point of obsession? Remember that? What about you married people? Do you remember that? How long have you been married? I want you to remember this. I so hope you remember this. Because I remember not wanting to hang up the phone. I remember before there were smartphones. And like, if you were lucky, your parents had a long cord on the phone so you could go into the bathroom. And it probably still had a dial. And then later on when you had buttons, whatever, you know. Or then if you had a phone in your room, like people could just listen in on it from another room anyway. I remember not wanting to go home. I remember the date not, wanting the date to not end. All that stuff. Sometimes we're in love in a different way. Sometimes the type of intensity, the great longing that we feel, even though we know what it's like to have it directed towards other people, because that's just the most normal thing in the world, every once in a while it hits you differently, and you become obsessed with a different kind of love, or a different context for love, a different way to live in love. There are different ways of being in love with God. And sometimes we fall in love with God or the church through our vocation. We get caught up in the mystery of the union between Christ and his church, and it becomes our marriage too. It can become something that we become very much united in, very much connected with it. It becomes our all-encompassing life commitment. It becomes our family. That's the type of great love that God gives us. Sometimes we're athirst for God. I was often in the monastery after vigils. We would finish praying vigils, so it'd be like 4:15, 4:30 in the morning or something. And I would be still in the church, and I'd be standing in front, and behind the altar, we had this statue of St. Bernard. They probably still have it there now. And he was holding an abbot's crozier, and then he's holding a church, like it's like a founder from an order will typically have something like that. They're marked as being real founding type people in the history of the church. And I remember I would stand there and I would just like be praying, but I'd be meditating on that statue of St. Bernard. And three words kept coming into my mind. Anima, animus, spiritus. Anima, animus, spiritus. They just kept coming up. And I thought I was a lunatic. I still think that now. But I have since gained an explanation of what anima, animus, and spiritus meant, because I talked to my abbot about it. And he told me, I'll give like a real abbreviated version, because if I go off on a theological diatribe, we'll never leave here. But basically, for our purposes, what it reduced to was the anima is the feminine energy, the animus is the male energy, the spiritus is the union going into the spirit, going into union with God, union with the Word. And so I realized more and more that that's what God was calling me to. That God calls us to be unified totalities, that God calls us to have this absolute, burning, passionate love that is something that we are to truly reside in. And it's so all-encompassing that we even reside in it with or without even a spouse. And so, in the light of blues being the type of music that always deals with love, great love, losing love, wishing you had love, wanting a different love than the one you got. By the way, the job isn't great either. But I thought the idea of being a thirst for God was something that was worthwhile of exploring through this arrangement of Willow, Weep for Me, a blues piece by Ronnell.